Good afternoon, everyone. It is our fourth week of Hands-on History at your house. So we've been doing a lot of fun museum challenges this summer so far. We have created museum exhibits, we have done newscasts, and we have done some historical presentations. But this week, it's all about historical newspapers. And newspapers are one of the best way to learn about life in the past. So your history information this week is all about different eras in local history. We're going to be looking at some major world events that happened, kind of some transportation history as well, and then also fashion, because who doesn't love fashion, and how our clothing has changed over the last almost 200 years. So I want to share a little bit about some newspapers with you. And I'll show you some pictures here. So you see our newspaper challenge here for today, July 29th. So local newspapers, we have had newspapers for over 200 years in the Mahoning Valley. I have just a few of them listed here. You can see names you probably recognize, like the Tribune Chronicle and the Youngstown Vindicator. But there's also some names you might not recognize. And Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley had a lot of ethnic newspapers in the early 1900s. So we had so many immigrants coming here to work in local steel mills and other factories. So we had a lot of ethnic newspapers. So you can see some of those listed here. You can see some of the kind of headlines that they might have and some of the mastheads, which is kind of the title, the logo at the top of the newspaper. So historic newspapers, like I said, they're great for learning history, of course. And if you know the date of the event that you're looking for, it's really easy to find this information. So this is a cover page, the front page of the Youngstown Vindicator, when the Titanic sank. And this was major news in the Valley for more than a week. This was on the front page. So I'm going to show you just a couple other front pages. This one here, this happened in 1963, and this was the front page after President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. So we can learn about how the community reacted to that, how the world reacted as well. And then here, this is from 1969, and this is when we landed on the moon, and this was a pretty big event. So again, you can kind of use these newspapers to learn about historic events from the past, but that's not all. There's a lot of great stuff you can get from newspapers, aside from history and news stories. So here we have some sports. Of course, every newspaper has a sports section, and you can find not only your local sports, like what high schools are doing and colleges are doing, but also big national sports like Major League Baseball, the National Football League, and all of those big sports as well. And in newspapers, you can also find great social and cultural news. So this is kind of that softer news, things that are going on in the community and things that people just like to read about. So here I found a picture of Queen Elizabeth. This was on the front page of the Vindicator, and she visited Washington, D.C., so a great picture of that. And then in the middle, you see a wonderful picture of a Youngstown youngster who is raking up the leaves in her front yard. And then over on the other side, this might not be familiar to many of you, but you would go to the newspaper to find out what was on television. So you can see the list that day of what was going on TV. Now, onto my favorite part of newspapers, and that's the advertisements. Advertisements are awesome because you learn so much about what life was like at the moment. You can see what they're advertising, you can see kind of how they're advertising it, and then you can also take a look at how things have really changed. So on this screen here, one of the things we see a lot of in especially really old newspapers, like more than 100 years ago, are these kind of cure-all in medicine. So you could take a pill and it would cure anything. Now, most of those were not true or accurate, but they are all over the place. So I have just a few of them here. I also have some shoes. You can see there the Duchess shoes in 1900, and then the Youngstown Carriage and Wagon Company advertisement. But I also love the one down at the bottom for Jell-O. So that's over 100 years ago. They're advertising Jell-O as a great dessert. So that's been around a while. And then I love this one here because old advertisements sometimes were like stories. So in this one, this is a guy named Marvin, and this is an advertisement for Listerine. And it tells this huge story about how Marvin basically has bad breath and how you really wouldn't want to meet him. But if he used Listerine, it would be okay. So that's a really fun advertisement from Listerine. And then here, these are a little bit more modern, a little bit more recent. We have a massive advertisement. This was 2 full pages of the Youngstown Vindicator from McKelvey's Downstairs Dollar Days. So that's a really fun one. And then I love this one from the 1980s. This is a Radio Shack advertisement for a computer. Probably doesn't look anything like the computers you're used to. Probably doesn't do anything like the computers you're used to, but that's also a really fun advertisement. So there are so many great ways that you can use newspapers to learn about life a long time ago. And of course, you can't forget the comics and the funnies. So I do love this joke from up at the top. This is from the 1860s. This is one of my favorite newspaper jokes. And it says, "The kitchen is the place of many stirring things." I always love a good pun. And then I put in some other comics there that I think we're all kind of familiar with, those great comic pages in the newspaper. So remember to head to our website, mahoninghistory.org, and click on the Learn tab up at the top, and then you'll see Hands on History right there. It's going to take you to this page, and you're going to find every week that we have these great Hands on History at Your House projects. And then just click on the historic newspaper one. You will see this, which is all of your challenge guidelines, and you are going to be able to create your own historic newspaper. And you're going to be able to base it on any time period you choose, whether you want to go way back in time, like 200 years ago, or you want to do something from today. You have a couple of options. You can do a smaller newspaper with just 1 or 2 stories, or you can do a bigger newspaper with a few news stories, a social story, and some advertisements as well. So be creative, have fun, check out the activities, the history information, and I can't wait to see the historic newspapers that you guys come up with. And make sure to share it with History at My House 2020. That's the hashtag we're sharing all of these great projects with. And I will see you back next week for our final installment of Hands on History at Your House, where it's going to be, well, your choice. Next week is all about the historian's choice. And you just have to wait and see what that's going to be all about. All right, we'll see you guys next week.